Hello again and welcome to episode 3 of The Greatest Steeler, where Jonathan Fearnley, Seth Bennett and myself, David Sims, we all come up with our, if you like, fantasy elite ice hockey league teams. Now, in episodes 1 and 2, Jonathan, Seth and myself have already given you our 2 goalies, 6 defensemen and 12 forwards. We've gone with 14 imports and 6 indigenous Brits. Now, we've got to put it all together. In episode 2, we did that for the goalies and the defensemen. Fairness, it was fairly easy. But now, 4 lines of forwards. Let's just have a recap. First of all, the goalies. We've all decided, the 3 of us, that Jody Lehman starts and Jeff Woolhouse is his backup. Then, on the back end, it's Steve Munn and Rod Sarich. It's DION Darling. Nasty, miserable, moody, grumpy. We loved him. And Kevin Bollebrook, who's going to sort him all out because Kevin was very nice. And then we're going with the 2 Brits. Ben O'Connor, the best British defenceman in the history of Britain ever. And Davey Phillips, our favourite one. But now the forwards. So first of all, let me bring the 2 brains of the outfit in, Seth and Jonathan. Jonathan, we'll start with you. The goalies and the defence went fairly easy, but the forwards, I've got a feeling we could end up having a little bit of a row over some of these.
It's going to be difficult because not only have we got to put the right 12 players in, we've also got to try and, where best as possible, put them in units that'll work and go for combinations that are actually going to be successful in the game for our lives that we're organising this for. We've got a lot of the same players, but some people have them as a line 1, line 2 or a line 3 player. We're going to have to come to a consensus, and that won't be as easy this time.
Seth, what's the main priority for you that you get into these 12 forwards, these 4 lines? What are you looking to achieve in the next hour?
Well, you see this back here. This is a red face. And this is when bad behaviour in our household gets beyond the pale. There's the green face, there's the orange face, and then right here is the red face. I don't want to put either you or Jonathan on the red face for making bonehead decisions. That's what I've got to guard against. Key thing for me, it's got to have heart, it's got to have soul, and it cannot have people who are going to bring this team down. It's got to make the team as a whole better, allied with their individual skills. And one other thing I think it's important to say, this is a little bit like arbitration in North American sports. What we're talking about is some great players. We're now going to spend the next however long pulling them apart and pulling them to bits. It doesn't mean we don't like them. It doesn't mean we don't think they're good players. We've just got other players we think are a little bit better.
Exactly, because over all of our 3 teams, there's not a bad player that we've chosen. You know, they're all players that we think are going to make this squad. So no bad players. Don't take it personally if you're listening at home in wherever Canada. We love you. We love you all. But we just love a few players. Yeah, we like you. We like you all, but we just love some others. That means Dowdy, you're definitely in, kid. Can I just look? I looked at all of our 3 teams, Jonathan, and there's a few names, as Seth just said there, that spring up on all the teams. Our first debate here, I got a feeling we're going to go with Le Guay and Talbot. I didn't have Joey Talbot in. I don't know how I didn't have him in, but he just never fitted into my lineup. But I think it was a battle I would lose with you and Seth. So Le Guay and Talbot are definitely going to be in. I think the other 2 players that are definitely going to be in is Warren Fretter. But here's our one dilemma. You and I have got Warren Fretter together. Seth here has got Fretter with Le Guay and Talbot. And I think our first decision is, are these going to be 2 different blocks? Or are we actually going to take Fretter off Waz's line? And before Seth comes in on that, Jonathan, what are your thoughts? Do you think we should keep them apart or put them together?
We're imagining that we're taking these players at their absolute Steelers peak. And at their absolute Steelers peak, there's no way that War and Fretter are going to be separated. There's no way that Le Guay and Talbot are going to be separated. When you're talking about great elite league pairings, those are the players that are getting mentioned. You'll then get Carlson and Calder from Coventry and a few others, but those Steelers will be mentioned together. So for me, they've got to play together.
The interesting thing there is you've mentioned relationships that are centre-winger, always. Not two wingers. And my assumption is you want to play Fretter on the right side, Wyatt on the left-hand side. For me, what about the guy that plays in the middle then? Are they just a complete irrelevant? Is this a donut line? You know, nothing in the centre. You just have to look at it. And for me, this is all about building a Steelers team where you could play fantasy hockey a little bit here. Why not? Take Fretter, and with all of his brilliance and his stick handling and his skills, not to mention that Major League shot that he had, but you've got Joey Talbot, the master of the deflection and causing trouble around the net. You got him playing that role. You got Fretter with his craft and his skill and his play. And then you've got that booming one-timer of Jeff Legui. Are you telling me that doesn't work?
So you're playing Legui at centre come what may?
Legui is my line one centre in this lineup.
Okay, you see, now in my lineup, I went with Ben Simon in between War and Fretter. And I like that. And the more I keep looking at it on a piece of paper, the more I like that big, solid sentiment, using the craft of Fretter, using the net presence of War. I have to say, I think that's a terrific line.
Ben Simon
and that
in your
would
top
then...
six? Didn't score after Christmas?
No, I liked him as a first-line centre. I thought I would have stuck with that.
Truth being told, you look at his stats.
Yeah.
From memory, he was goal-heavy pre-Christmas. Second half of the year, he took a battering to the brain, the body, and probably everything else, dealing with what he had to deal with in Sheffield. But to me, he's a great line three centre. He is your absolute shut-down, energy, line three, penalty kill, big body that you can go and throw out there.
Well, actually, I had Legui as my third line centre, so I don't mind swapping. I don't mind swapping those two around and throwing Simon down onto the third unit and throwing Leggy up on the first unit. I'm not happy about splitting War and Fretter up. I've got to be honest. It's not something I would naturally do.
Can I make the argument then for the player I've chosen to centre War and Fretter, which is Tyler Mosienko, who in 2 full seasons won 2 championships. In the second of those, he was the team's top scorer. So he's outperforming War and Fretter. Put him with the best and you'll get the best from him. I know you're going to come back with all the reasons why he shouldn't be in the team, but when you look at the output of Steelers forwards and did they get results, did they win stuff? Yeah, Tyler Mosienko
played in the middle of War and Fretter, I recall, for a part of that season. War and Fretter weren't happy.
That's why I've kept it together.
Secondly, when Mosienko went, there was a queue of people looking to take him to the airport. Seth said at the beginning of this little broadcast that he didn't want anybody pulling his team down. Now, personally, no gripes with Tyler. Decent old fella, no problems. But I don't think he's in that greatest ever Steelers team. I just don't see, with all the players that we've got to choose from, that Mosey is the guy that we kind of run with. I'm not over happy about having Mosienko in my greatest team. Seth, what about you?
No, it's not happening because there are better centremen than him. And whilst I accept that he scored those goals, he scored some of those goals, quite a lot of those goals, against very, very poor teams. None of us are sitting here with our hand in the air saying Neil Clark should be our starting left winger. Look at the goals he scored in the seasons he played with the Sheffield Steelers. You look at the breakdown of where those goals came from, it doesn't get you into the greatest Steelers team, you know, in the Elite League era. So for me, it doesn't work there. I don't mind seeing Fretter and Wyatt play together. My question mark is, who do you put to centre them? What about the magical one? You know, the magical one and Fretter have got a few bits in common, if you like. They've got those great hands, but he can be that big, strong, shut-down centre. He's got that wicked one-timer. And, you know, Mark Ducian was he would add a little bit of edge and grit to that line, if you like.
Did Ducian get rid of the puck quick enough for the likes of having the quality of Warren Fretter around him? Fretter would have wanted the puck earlier, wouldn't he? Would Ducian have, in a Mark Matheson type of way, obviously forward defenseman, the criticism on Matheson was that he held on to it too long. Did Ducian hold on to it too long, playing in an era where you could do that, where Wazzy and Fretter, well, Wazzy just want to get to the net, but Fretter would want the puck a little bit earlier? That was my only concern of putting Ducian with with Wire and Fretter, and that's why I thought Simon was a good choice, because I think Simon would have made those simple plays and would have got the puck to Fretter, and surely you want Fretter on the puck.
What did Mark Ducium come to the UK as, if you remember? His first club was the London Knights. What was he? A shut-down third-line defensive centre who went up against other teams' top lines night in, night out. Second year when he came with the Steelers, he played down the lineup in that role where he had to move the puck quickly. It was only when the standard of the league went down a little bit and where he had to play in that bigger role and he didn't have the opportunity to maybe play with players as gifted as a Fretter or some of the boys that he played with down in London. Then all of a sudden, he had to take that number one mantle. And from the moment he took that number one mantle, he became the kind of player that you wish to have. Over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, skated like the wind, defensively excellent, but so creative. He could kill you many different ways.
Yeah, Mark Ducium in the title-winning season of 03-04, 62 games played, 55 assists. I'm not worried about how he's going to get the puck to our goal scorers. His numbers did drop off, but as you mentioned, Seth, it's through playing a slightly different role. He was the go-to creative option in that first Elite League season. Things changed, before and after that. But I've no doubt at all that if he's on a line with Warren Fretter, he's not going to be a puck hog. He is going to be the supplier that they're going to need. I think it's a pretty good balance. I'm prepared to accept the Mosienko argument. I'm happier with the Ducium than a Simon on that top unit.
Okay, well, if we do go with Ward, Ducium and Fretter, it gives us then the Dave Matsos problem. And the Dave Matsos problem always was, who the hell do we put with Le Guin Talbot? So who are we going to put up before we decide it's not going to be Colton Fretter? And I agree with you, Seth. Fretter would be a fantastic option, but I do like the more balanced top six of having Wire and Fretter together. But before we actually confirm and write in ink Ward, Ducium and Fretter, who do we put with Talbot and Le Guin? Who goes on that other side?
Well, I think you've got a couple of choices here. Okay, one of them would be to play Robert Dowd, a guy that works really exceptionally hard. He's got that wonderful shot. He's somebody that could complement those two, I think, in what he brings to the table. And then I think if you look a little bit deeper down the lineup, could you maybe play Guillaume Debian on that line? Would he offer you that? Could you potentially go the other way and go with a load of speed? And you're going to laugh when I say this, but with Kent Simpson on that line. Options for you.
I'm never going to laugh.
13 minutes in, Jonathan, and we've just had the Kent Simpson.
I'm not going to laugh at any
Simpson.
Kent Simpson selections, but Robert Dowd was on my line, and I still think he belongs there. If you're saying where does Robert Dowd belong in a greatest Steelers team, he belongs in the top six. I don't want to put him on a third or fourth line where it's a bit more of a check line, a bit more grindy. No, I want him with our goal scorers because Robert Dowd can score and supply at an elite level. And he's done that for years and years. For the Steelers, did it for the Giants. Robert Dowd's a top six forward and he needs to play in the top six.
I tend to agree that Dowdy is a top six forward. My only concern of putting him with Le Guin and Talbot was Dave Matsos put him with Le Guin and Talbot. And when Talbot went, Le Guin and Dowd did play together and they were never brilliant. They were never wow together. I didn't think Le Guin got the best out of Dowd. I don't think Dowd had his best days with Le Guin, though I do think that Dowdy should be a nailed-on top six. Seth, you have your hand in the air like a school child waiting to say something. Say something, Seth.
What about Colton Fretter? I mean, wonderful player, would fit in on that right-hand side of that top line. He would give speed, great hands, goal-scoring, creative play, a bit of edge. Wouldn't he fit?
But then would Dowdy play with Ward Ducium? So would Ward Ducium Dowd be a good second unit?
That's it. I think it would be a good second unit. Though you did talk me into Ducium, Fretter, and what? I like that line. I think it's got a lot of personality.
And I think if we do go with Ward Ducium and Fretter, that's
Fretter's
our number one line.
going to be a good player wherever he is.
Yeah,
Fretter's going to be a good player wherever he goes. Robert Dowd's going to be a good player wherever he goes. But we got our best out of War and Freta when they were together. We got our best out of Talbot and Le Guin when they were together. And I don't think Robert Dowd was Robert Dowd back when Joey Talbot was still in the team. He was still a younger player finding his way. Yeah, there was still production there, but the Robert Dowd of the last 3 or 4 years is a different Robert Dowd and a better Robert Dowd to the one that played under Dave Matsos. We're not taking Dave Matsos Robert Dowd, we're taking peak Robert Dowd, and that'll fit in perfectly on that second line.
Okay then, so are we agreeing on our number 1 unit starting this game for our lives? Matthew Waugh, the magical one, Mark Dudiam, and the great Colton Freta. And we're coming back with Talbot, Le Guin and Dowd. Do we like that?
No, David, we love that. It's brilliant.
We love that. Okay, we love that. Okay. I'm still not overly sure on Dowd with Le Guin. It's just a Dowd and Le Guin thing. You mentioned Debian. Pretty much we all had Debian on the 4th unit. So I that's why I kind of didn't want Debian to play on that top 6. The 3rd units, just to remind you, Jonathan, you went with John Armstrong, Ryan Finnerty and Ashley Tate. And bear in mind, we have got to get a couple of Brits into this lineup. We're only allowed 14 inputs. Seth, you went with Kent Simpson, Ben Simon and Ashley Tate. So there's 2 similarities there, Tate on both of those units. Our 3rd line centre, is it going to be Ben Simon?
I like him, 3rd line centre. I think he's big, strong, experienced. You know, he's going to use the body. He's going to lead from the front. You've got speed. For me, with Simpson on that line, and you've got all of the know-how of Ashley Tate, that is a shutdown line every day of the week for me.
Yeah. Talking of Ashley Tate, Jonathan, we do have to get 3 British players. We have to get 6 into this team. We've got Woolhouse, we've got Ben O'Connor, we've got Davey Phillips, we've got Dowd. We've got to get 2 more in. I'm guessing Jonathan Phillips is going to find his way onto that 4th unit. So Ashley Tate pretty much has to go onto this 3rd unit, doesn't he?
Ashley Tate could arguably make one of the top 2 units given his points production, more than a point a game over several seasons with the Steelers. But it feels like the 3rd line is the place that he's going to fit in best on this team. We all originally put him on our 3rd line, so that's where he should stay. Okay,
then. Just looking at this 3rd unit, we've got Ben Simon in the middle and we've got Ashley Tate, and that looks pretty much nailed on. One point I'd put to you both, Jonathan, Seth, all 3 of us, for this one final slot on the 3rd line, had different players. Jonathan, just off memory, you went with Big John Armstrong. Seth, Kent Simpson, and I went with Levi Nelson. And from my own point of view, I can't imagine an all-star Steelers team without Levi in it. Also, if he doesn't go here, then he doesn't go on the 4th unit. He's not a 4th line player. And he did it. He was all things for all seasons. Big goals, big hits, big plays, last-second goals, championship-winning goals, game-winning goals. Nelson did everything. And I think he was a better player than a lot of people gave him credit for. That line of Valdix, Dowd and Levi was an astonishing line. In fact, a lot of people will be watching this wondering why Valdix isn't in the middle of everything we've been talking about. And I would certainly go for Levi over both Simmer, who I love, and sorry, Kent, and Big John, who I love, but Levi, surely. Seth?
Levi Nelson was a player who was worth the admission money. Defensively, an absolute liability to the team.
Yeah.
Okay? He was the master of chaos. He had the ability to create all kinds of problems on the ice for all kinds of different people, like the Tasmanian Devil as he came spinning into whatever was going on. And he made great, great things happen. And I absolutely adored watching him play. However, he has no business in my bottom 6. No business. If he's going to be in the team, he needs to go up the pecking order. I think maybe he's the guy that plays with Jeff Le Guin and Joey Talbot. If he's going to be in the team, and I think you make a wonderful argument, David. You make a wonderful argument for him. But but he's not there at number 9 or number 7. He's up there at, number 3 or number 6.
Jonathan, if I may just come in, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't actually I have him in my top 6, which I did. I had him with Connolly, and we haven't even spoke about Connolly yet. Connolly and Nelson in my top 6 because I didn't have Joey Talbot in my top 6. Now, you can't throw Dowd onto a third line with Tate, Simon, Dowd. I don't think that works. So, are we again re-examining one of the top 6? War, Doody and Fretter, Talbot. Look, is there a question that, heaven forbid, boys, I know I haven't been wrong many times in my life, but I don't think I was wrong again. I actually think Levi goes in my opinion, ahead of Talbot.
No,
John?
He doesn't.
No?
Simply because Joey Talbot was a better player than Levi Nelson. If you're judging it on an overall, what number would you give this player as an overall rating on a computer game? Fretter gets a higher number than Nelson. Fretter's the better player. I love Levi Nelson.
What about Talbot, though? What about Talbot? Is Talbot a better player?
Oh, sorry, Talbot, yeah. Talbot's better than Nelson, yeah, for sure. That would be my view anyway. But
Well, if we don't put Levi Nelson into this, if you like, 9th slot, Levi Nelson isn't going to make the greatest ever Steelers team. And I've got and I just wonder who else we put in. So the choices are Nelson, Armstrong, Connolly, or Kent Simpson. Because I think our fourth line is going to take care of itself, and I think we're going to rip through that. So one of those players, and Jonathan, come in here with John Armstrong, because John Armstrong was the player that you promoted for that slot. Why should we put John in there?
We all know how good Colton Fretter was. John Armstrong is on a better points per game rate than Colton Fretter was. He already has the same number of assists in fewer games. John Armstrong's points output is better than you think it is. He's 11th in Steelers Elite League scoring. Most of the players above him in the list are there because they've played more games. John Armstrong, if he's still with the Steelers for another couple of years, he's going to end up as one of the Steelers' all-time top Elite League point scorers. And when it comes to the big moments, you mentioned Levi Nelson for last-minute goals. John Armstrong has done that as well. You talk about overtime winners, you talk about playoff performances. John Armstrong comes up big in the playoffs. John Armstrong is over a point a game in the playoffs for the Sheffield Steelers. You want a player for the big occasion? I want John Armstrong. We look at him this season and how he was the Steelers pretty much all year, the only reliable face-off winner. I want him centering a unit. I got him as my third-line centre.
He's not a better player though than Ben Simon.
But no, Simon's our third line. If Armstrong's in this team, Armstrong's on the wing. And you actually had him on the wing in your original 12 because you had Finnerty as a third line centre. Seth and I are going to go to blows in a minute for our fourth line centre between Perron and Finnerty. But if does Armstrong play as a third line winger with Simon and Tate? And I love Big John, but honestly, Jonathan, you're speaking like a maths teacher here. Oh, it's points per game, it's points per game. I just think Nelson gives you more. I think Nelson or Connolly give you more in that third line winger's position. And I love Big John, and he'll be watching this and he'll be going, yeah, I know you love me, Simpson. And I do love you, John, but I don't see him in that third line winger's position. I just don't see it.
If you put Armstrong as a winger, then he gains. He loses the face-offs, which is one of the reasons that I've got him in, is just how reliable he's been. But if we're going for Simon as a centre, which I have no problem with, Simon very nearly made the cut in my team anyway, so I have no issues with Simon getting in. I just desperately need Ryan Finnerty to be in this team somewhere. I don't want him to be forced out. So if I can't win the Armstrong argument, I've got to make sure I win the Finnerty one.
That's good, because we'll gang up on Seth in a minute on that. I just don't see Armstrong going in that third line job. So now we're down to Kent Simpson or Brendan Connolly on a third line.
David, this isn't even a conversation piece. Okay? Kent Simpson, 3 seasons, 6 trophies with the Sheffield Steelers. 3 seasons, 6 trophies. It's not even a discussion point. He can do everything that Connolly can do as well, but better. He's faster. He's somebody that played at a higher level than Connolly all the way through his career. He's somebody that's won in multiple leagues. Kent Simpson is a winner, and he is on our team. He plays every situation for you.
Is he another guy that perhaps should, if he was in the top six, are you happy with him in that third line role, Seth?
Yeah, because I know he can play that role, because he came into that country in that role and outperformed what everybody expected, and actually became one of the stars on the greatest ever Sheffield Steelers team back in 2000-2001. You know what he signed for, David, at that time, and it wasn't too much more than a bag of chips and some mushy peas, really, in the context of that team.
Seth, 425.
Yeah, but in the context of that team and at that time, he was somebody who came in cheap as chips, and he absolutely delivered. He then delivered again with a title the following year, where he led the team in scoring, and then he came back again in a third and final spell when the team was absolutely falling apart at the seams, and he did another terrific job. So, and won a trophy that year as well. So you look at what his body of work is: fast skating, defensively brilliant. He can play left or right hand side for you. He's somebody that just gives you so much within that lineup.
Jonathan, so Seth makes a good point. He scored. He was great at the assists. He was a great penalty killer. He was a great usher at Seth's wedding. He was...
best man.
Was he best man?
No, actually, Fearnley was the best man.
Fearnley was the best man, yeah. He was the usher, yeah.
I think there's a bit of
you had a good wedding turnout.
Half this team was at the wedding, actually.
Exactly. Jonathan, your thoughts quickly on Connolly versus Simpson for that final slot on the third line.
Connolly is not a third liner. He doesn't play on the third line now. He's not ever going to play on a Sheffield Steelers third line. He is a top six forward. That's where he belongs. The things that Connolly can potentially take away from the team discipline-wise, I think also apply a little bit to Levi Nelson. There's only so many hooking and retaliation penalties I want this team to take. They're both negative marks in their columns. But for me, Kent Simpson, the argument is strong, but we can't make it based on what he did before the Elite League. Otherwise, Ron Schudra's in this team. Ron Schudra played some Elite League, but Ron Schudra in the Elite League for the Steelers was not Ron Schudra from the Super League days or from the Premier League days. So we've not given Schudra any consideration. So Seth, the argument about Kent Simpson has to solely be on that season that he came back. And was that one season that he came back really better than the other players that we've mentioned? I'm not sure they were.
100%. He's a serial winner. What do I want in my team? I want guys that know how to win. And he's won at every single stage of his career. And that's why I want him there. And you know what? Was he the toughest player to ever walk the face of the planet? No. Would he drop the gloves and fight if he had to? Yeah, absolutely. He was a guy you wanted in the trenches alongside you, not against you, every single night. And you know what? When the rest of the guys were down, he's the guy that picks them up and gets them back going again. He wasn't a DION darling where he screamed and shouted at you, but he was a guy that would hold people to account by his work rate, and he would say stuff in the locker room as well.
You know what, Jonathan? He was an absolute top bloke. He was team first. He doesn't make my all-star team. He doesn't. I knew he would make Seth's, and he makes it with good. He makes it with good reason. We laugh, we joke about the winning, but I got to be honest. I still go back and I take Connolly or Nelson over Simpson. I do that. So this is a tough one. Let's just leave that space for a second then and see if there's any room that develops on our fourth line. We all went for Jonathan Phillips, and we all went for DAVEY in our lineup. We had three different centres. Jonathan, you went for Jason Hewitt. God bless him. We love him, but there's not a chance he's making the All-Star team. Seth, you went for Fearnley, who I thought was a great shout. I mean, top bloke. Played hurt, played injured, played gritty, led the team. Almost as grumpy as DION darling. And I went with Ryan Fearnley. So And I do think it's a two-way hit between Perron and Finnerty. And I just give it to Finnerty because I just thought Finnerty was a little bit better player.
You
I
see,
thought he
that's
brought
where
the
I
same
would disagree
tenacious-
with you. I think
he
Perron was a
was.
better player than Finnerty. He was tougher. He was meaner. And he had, where Finnerty had everything to say in the world, Perron said it when it counted. And he was somebody that, you remember when he beat up that big fella from Basingstoke? Do you remember that? The only time I've ever seen in my life, mid-fight, the referee skate across to the penalty box, collect a towel, and come back for the end of the fight where he put it immediately on the player's face. Do you remember that? The guy squared off. He didn't realise Perron was a lefty and he just filled him full of left hands. And that. Do you remember how he was against London when that guy was giving the team all kinds of grief and all of a sudden Perron absolutely lost his mind? I mean, he is the captain, and even with Dion Darling, he's the captain of the Screw You team. He had more get stuffed than almost any player that's played for the Sheffield Steelers that I can think of. Him and Darling are like this. They're so very, very close. He's a right-handed shot in the same way that Finnerty's a right-handed shot. And he just has, to me, I think he just fulfills so much for you. He's a bit bigger, a bit stronger than Finnerty. Gives you probably a bit more body contact on that fourth unit as well.
Jonathan, what are your thoughts on this? And make your case for Jason Hewitt, who was your man.
Well,
even though he would give us one too many Brits, if you like.
Well,
and if we went with him, do we then move Ashley Tate out?
No, we don't move Ashley Tate out. Tate makes it. The reason that I had Hewitt in was because I wanted the extra import defenceman. Since I've not won that argument, then I'm all for. Well, it needs to be the import forward. And for me, it has to be Finnerty. And this is where the maths teacher side of me and the numbers just disappear out of the window. Because I can't make a numbers-based case for Ryan Finnerty. We can talk about some of the trophies that he won while he was a player. But this is a heart pick. This is what I felt like watching Ryan Finnerty. I hated it when he came back to play against the Steelers with Cardiff. That was awful.
Right.
I absolutely hated it. I want him on my team. And I hate the fact that he might not make this. So I can't give you the usual number spiel. I've got all the stats for all the players. And for Ryan Finnerty, there's just not much there because the numbers don't tell the Ryan Finnerty story. But I know how it felt to watch him, and I want to feel that again.
I can't, Seth, if I look at your suggestions here, I just can't see an all-time Sheffield Steelers team without Levi Nelson and Ryan Finnerty. And I'm a massive Perron fan. Perron was almost made my final cut. Love Pernsey to death. Love what he bought. Hear everything you're saying. But I just felt the league had moved on a little bit when Finnerty came in. It was a slightly better league. And I just can't... I wouldn't be heartbroken to see Mike Perron. I'm sensing me fourth line, but I would be if Levi Nelson wasn't in the team either. I just can't see a team without both of those.
So are you asking me right now, David? Have I got to choose between my best man and my usher?
I think you might have to, Seth.
Have I got to choose between my mate Mike in Newmarket or my pal Ken, who's been alongside me since 2000, who sat next to me during the last Olympic Games, who I've watched win all of those 6 trophies over his 3 different spells with the Sheffield Steelers. The thing is, with all the players that we're talking about, and one thing that I absolutely love about both of the players, well, all 3 of those players actually, is all of them have got a loyalty and an affinity to Sheffield, where Mike never wanted to leave. He also didn't want to play anywhere else. As soon as that time was over with Sheffield, and I know he'd had his injuries, he had offers to go and play for other clubs. And he just said, nope, if I'm not playing in Sheffield, I'm not playing at all. Simpson came to Sheffield 3 times because he loved it. And if you ask him now about the one club in his career that he would go back to, it would always be Sheffield. I wonder what Finner would say.
I think Finner loved his time in Sheffield. He coached in Sheffield. He was, I think if he wasn't so involved in Manchester, he might even have been in Sheffield today. So I think Finnerty's... I hear what you're saying, but... Well, if you threw... I'm going Nelson then. If I'm going Perron, I'm going Nelson on that third unit.
And if I'm going Simpson, you're going Finnerty.
I'll give you Perron on the fourth line for Nelson on the third line.
Oh, this is horse trading, isn't it?
I won't accept that because Finnerty's not on either line then.
He's not.
For me, we've agreed on Ashley Tate and Ben Simon. We've agreed on Jonathan Phillips and Guillaume Desbiens. There are 2 spots to be filled, and the arguments that have convinced me most have been, well, Finnerty makes one of the spots, I don't mind which. Of the arguments that have been made for Simpson and Nelson and Perron, Nelson wins that argument for me.
Did you not watch the Sheffield Steelers when Mike Perron played or when Kent Simpson played?
I didn't see as much as the 05-06 season. I saw more.
Well, this is a waste of time then, isn't it? Crikey.
No, I didn't see.
This is like trying to
much of
sell
it.
kids now a Nintendo 64. They just don't believe in it. They don't understand how good it was at the time. I mean, crikey. You know, the Nokia 6010, playing Snake was the thing to do. But now, with all the touchscreen phones, you can play whatever you like.
Yeah, that Sheffield Steelers
David,
team
like
in 05-06.
David, you've brought me into this conversation, and now all of a sudden I feel like I'm teaching A-level maths to a blooming reception class.
That Steelers team, 05-06, finished on 38 points, less than a point a game, 6th in an 8-team league. Why didn't I travel 2 hours back from Middlesbrough? They weren't very good. They won the Knockout Cup. That wasn't a good Steelers team, 05-06. Kent Simpson might have been the best player on it, but they weren't a good team.
Jonathan, do you know how many coaches they had that year?
4. They had 4.
So, but they weren't a good team. Why did I not travel back for them as much as I did for other teams in other seasons?
They were a rebellious little group.
One of the poorest teams.
But he was the best player at that time. He makes that team better. And you can take your Levi Nelson. By the way, Kent Simpson, playoff semi-final goal scorer, playoff final goal scorer. Okay? Big goals, big games. Knockout Cup final, Kent Simpson scores a goal. Mike Perron scores a goal in the Knockout Cup final. Even with the worst of Sheffield Steelers teams, potentially, in quite some time, they still won a trophy.
Ryan Finnerty scored playoff championship goal. MUNN got 1, Finnerty got 1.
Bennett got 1 as well.
Against Nottingham. Yeah, against Nottingham. 2-0 victory. Thanks for coming. Perennial losers, Nottingham.
Okay.
If
you're leaving it down to me, Simpson gets the third line nod, and I'll give you Finnerty on the fourth line. And it's only because I like Ryan.
Jonathan, you get Finnerty, but you lose Nelson.
Yeah, I mean Nelson didn't make the cut into my 20 anyway. So if he doesn't make the cut into the overall 20, I'll settle for that as long as Finnerty makes it. So if we're going for a Simpson third, Finnerty fourth on the fourth line, yeah, that'll do me.
Okay, well then, this is what we come out with: War, Dutium and Fretter, Talbot, Legui and Dowd, Simon in between Simpson and Tate, and Finnerty in between Jonathan Phillips and Guillaume Desbiens. And I feel we've kind of just slotted Jono and Desi in there. A quick word on both of them. I'll start with you, Seth, on Jono, and then I'll come to you, Jonathan, on Desi and why they make it. Seth?
I started commentating on the Steelers in 1998. I don't believe I've seen a player during the last 20-odd years who has given as much to the Sheffield Steelers as Jonathan Phillips, has given as much to Great Britain as Jonathan Phillips. He plays hurt. He plays with energy, effort and passion every single night. I've seen a lot of very professional athletes, across the rest of my working career, he is right up amongst the very best. The best Olympians, the best Premier League footballers. He has about 1 week off a year, and then he's back at it, working hard. He's a guy that, like a Chris Chelios, for example, in the NHL, could go on to play into his 40s, and he plays a high-energy game. He's not a defenseman that can just sit back and absorb the minutes. He can do so much, and with, relatively limited ability, he's playing better hockey now than he did at any point before in his career. He is phenomenal, a great penalty killer, a great team guy. He's been a really good captain, and somebody who, you talk about the best ever signings for the Sheffield Steelers, David. He has to be up there. He has to be right up there.
100%, couldn't agree more. Jonathan, a few words on the man whose name hangs in your kitchen, DAVEY. What a great commentary line.
Yeah, pride of place alongside Carl Lozon. I thought long and hard about whether DAVEY should be in my team, because I worried that moment, that goal, and what it ultimately led to was clouding my judgment in terms of how good a player he actually was. And then I took the moments to think a little deeper and realised we need that character, we need that person, we need that leadership. DAVEY he meant so much to that team, and the team wasn't the same when he left. The Steelers struggled to replace him. There are some players who, over their time, become irreplaceable, and in a short space of time, just over 100 games, DAVEY became that. Yes, he produced in the big moments, well, so did Nelson, so have plenty of others, but I don't think we'll find another DAVEY for a while. I think we might find another Nelson. Maybe we've already got another Nelson. But another DAVEY, well, they don't come around very often. And yeah, that moment was a great one, but there's so many other things that he brings to the team. We don't need any more goals. We don't need any more assists. But we need a DAVEY.
Seth, I can see you with your hand in the air.
David, you and I have had this conversation a million times. Since Scott Allison, how many great power forwards have the Sheffield Steelers had? Genuine power forwards.
Very few.
Guillaume Debian.
100% has to make your team.
Absolutely. He is one of the greatest Sheffield Steelers players of all time. He would fit on any version. You want to stick him on that 95 team, he would have been one of the better players. You want to put him on the 2000-2001 team, he would have made that a better team. If you want to
I'll throw one at you, Seth. I'll throw one at you. Debian or AD? Debian or Metcalf?
Debian.
Debian. And I do that. And actually, if you call Paul Thompson and say, where did it start to go wrong, Paul? He'll say to you, when he looked at his phone and he saw Guillaume Debian's name flash up in the summer. And when Debian left, we never replaced Debian. And he said that was the first brick that, it was the Macquarie thing didn't work out. Macquarie was we all love Mags, a nice bloke, all of that, but Macquarie was a poor man's Debian. And it didn't work for him. So, no, Desi has to make it. And you've got to be honest, we've got a team full of captains here. If Jonathan Phillips wasn't in that lineup, Desi would be my captain. He'd be somebody who could actually, keep a little grips on your darlings of this world as well. But Debian he's a surefire shoe-in as you can get. So as we finish then, boys, with War, Dutium and Freta, Talbot, Laguay and Dowd, Simpson, Simon and Tate, Phillips, Finnerty and Debian, we add them to Lehman and Woolhouse in goal, and we add them to MUNN and Sarich, Darling and Bollebrook and O'Connor and Phillips, and we've come up there with a great Steelers team. Is Jonathan Phillips the captain of that team, Seth?
No.
Who is? Jonathan, your thoughts on captain? What Seth has the brain cells run through him? What's your thoughts on captaincy?
It's Jonathan Phillips. It just has to be. There's been no more successful Steelers captain. And, okay, Gertson was the captain in the 13-14 season, so But it should have still been Jonathan Phillips. I don't think, Gertson, great player, top bloke, but I'm not taking the captaincy off Jonathan Phillips if I'm coaching that team. So there should be another trophy that he has lifted as captain. And he's done it for so long, it feels strange to think that one day somebody else will have to captain the Steelers, because number 20 is the Steelers captain. Yes, there are so many leaders, you probably couldn't pick a bad captain out of the players we've chosen, but Jonathan Phillips has the captaincy at the moment, and he keeps it for me.
Shame on Doug Christensen for taking the captaincy off Jonathan Phillips. He was trying to reinvent the wheel, and that's no disrespect to Stephen Gertson, who was one of life's top people, good bloke, but it was criminal.
The two biggest mistakes he made, David. One was not even entertaining the prospect of Rod Sarich coming back to play for him on the strength of how he played for Great Britain in an Olympic qualifier in Riga. And the second one, which, to me they're equally as preposterous when you think about what happened after that, was taking the captaincy from Jonathan Phillips. Just
not
too
what
ridiculous.
What about not even making Tyler Michelle an offer?
Oh, anyway,
it was baffling. It was baffling. Okay then. You know what, Seth? Go on. Tell me who your captain would be.
I've been very swayed by that argument from Jonathan. He is absolutely right for all of those reasons.
He's 100% right. Yeah. He's 100% right.
I can't imagine Dion Darling playing for the Sheffield Steelers not as captain.
I think he'd kill 6 or 7 players on this team if Dion was captain of this team. And I don't think we can afford that to happen. I think Debian wears an A. Without a shadow of a doubt, Debian wears an A. And I'll give you... see, how does Steve Munn not wear an A?
You see, Steve Munn is a C.
Yeah, but he's not a C in this team. He's not a C in this team. I'll give you Darling. I'll give you Darling as an A. I'll give you Debian as an A. And the only reason I don't give an A to Steve Munn is Steve Munn is such a class act. Steve Munn doesn't need an A. Steve Munn can be a captain, can be an associate captain without wearing a letter. Because
when you look through that, you've got Munn, you've got Bollebrook, you got Simpson, you got Finnerty. All of them have captained teams down the years, haven't they? So all the players that are going to bring it to be fair, it's a little bit like the coach's position. It doesn't really matter because that room is going to be strong enough to deal with most problems that would come its way.
The other thing about who gets the C and who gets to wear the A's is that's needed for administrative purposes on the ice, and the kudos that comes with wearing a letter on your shirt as well, of course. But leadership comes in many forms, and I want Jonathan Phillips to be the voice. I want him to be the person who sets the standards and holds everybody else to account because he has the highest standards. I don't think Steve Munn, as Dave said, needs to be a captain because when Steve Munn speaks, people will listen. When Debian speaks, people will listen. So the off-ice leadership will come from so many areas. Who gets to wear the A's on the ice is largely irrelevant to me.
Yeah, the fact that we spent 5 minutes discussing the C is crazy because it's Jonathan Phillips every day of the week and twice on a Sunday. Seth, you just touched on that final decision we have to make. Who coaches the Sheffield Steelers team? This could be an interesting one. Jonathan, you went with Ben Simon. I think we can disregard Simon now because I don't think the greatest ever Steelers team has a player coach, and Simon's made it. But I'm sure you'll make your point. Seth, you went for Mike Blaisdell, and I went for Paul Thompson. Jonathan, your thoughts now, several hours later since we started putting this all together?
Simon made my team as the coach because maybe it's a sympathy vote that he didn't quite make it as a player into my 20. But also that Steelers team of 10-11, it took over from a team that it won the 2020, but it wasn't good hockey at the end of the Matsos era. It wasn't particularly exciting stuff. The team sort of limped through the season, really, and it was all a bit of a sad end. And the way he picked the team up, There was no pre-season games, straight into it, and first game, first shift, thought, oh, this is good. The way that team hit and the way that team scored was entertaining throughout the season, and I want entertainment from my hockey. I also want winning, and Simon's team provided that winning. They were league champions. When the games mattered down the stretch, they won the ones that mattered. But, yeah, if we can't have a player coach, then fair enough. Just quickly on the numbers.
Because they didn't do the double. They won the league by jumping out to a massive margin and saw it whittle away as the season went on. Actually, second half of the season, they got pretty much dragged back in.
Seth, you can't take away. I mean, forget the points.
This is arbitration,
David. The job that Simon did, just, and we all know that time. Myself, Matt Soss, Mike O'Connor, had gone, and in a way to try and remove, if you like, the Bob Phillips era, and he came in, the political, the toxicity, everything that he had to deal with. You have to say he dealt with it brilliantly well, and I got to be honest, I don't think any of the other coaches that we've got here would have handled it as well as Simon did. Now, Simon was perhaps a bit of a different type of character, but I feel that he's not going to coach my team, by the way, here. But you have to tip your hat and say, I don't know of another coach in the Steelers' history that could have handled the situation that Simon was put in. Never knew the players, never knew the league, never knew ownership, never knew anything. He was jettisoned in, basically do it all. And he did it all terrifically well. And how that team actually won a league, I was baffling.
No, but David, I think the point that I was making was different. You can say
that Simon was a massive plus on that.
The point I was making was very different, though, and that was essentially that actually a lot of the games down the stretch they didn't win. Their record in the second half of the season wasn't as near as good as it was in the first half of the season. From a purely coaching perspective, there have been better coaches of the Sheffield Steelers. That doesn't take away from the fact that he did a very, very good job in a very, very difficult situation. Systems-wise, tactics-wise, there was an awful lot that carried over from the previous incumbent in that job, particularly in the front half of the season when they won an awful lot of games. He also had an incredibly experienced top end of his team who helped him out an awful lot in that season in lots of different ways. As I say, this is not to take away from Ben Simon, because he's going to go on to be a very, very good coach in his own right, and he's already started to do that within his career, and he did a great job at the time. But he ain't my coach, and he ain't going to be the coach of this team, because the other side of that, David, is, look, this isn't the time where you have to construct the Berlin Wall between one side and the other side of the city. This is a time where we've got the greatest Sheffield Steelers side out there. You've got to kick the gate open, and you've got to enjoy watching this team, and this team have got to want to play for you. And there is no coach who've had players that have wanted to play for him, I don't think, more than Mike Blaisdell during his time with the Sheffield Steelers. He was a guy who basically did his big work through the months of April, May, June, July, and August, and after that he turned up to training and he turned up to games, and during the games he was an excellent coach, but he didn't worry too much about anything else. He managed his players on that bench better than probably any other Sheffield Steelers coach I can remember.
What year is this team playing in? Because if it's playing in the 2018, 2019, 2020 era, and I love Blazer, I walk over ground glass for Mike. Was he technically good enough?
Do you have to be technically good enough with this team?
Yes, you have to be. Surely you do. Surely you have to have you do have to be a little bit new school. And I know we've built a largely old school team here, and we all love our old school. We love our old school more than we love our new school. But you do have to have something more than just being the coach's mate and the coach's. And actually, that would be unfair on Mike to say the coach's mate, because there was plenty of players who didn't like Mike, and there was plenty of players who Mike had to kick up the arse. Metaphorically, because you're not allowed to do that in the new world. Which is a sham on the new world, to be fair, but that's another argument for another day. I just feel that Paul it ended sourly, and we all know that. But I just still feel that I've worked with all of the coaches at the Steelers to date. That Paul would still be that best one, but I've got a feeling I might be losing this argument because I think, Jonathan, if you were picking between, who would you go with between Blaisdell and Thompson, John?
Before we want to get to that, I just want to pick up, Seth, on a couple of things regarding Ben Simon and also link it into what you were saying about what era is this Steelers team operating in. That Ben Simon team scored a ton of goals. There was also the doormats of Newcastle and Edinburgh in that team. If you take out those games against Edinburgh and Newcastle and just pick the games against competitive teams, that is still the highest scoring per game team that the Elite League has seen. So, whenever the standard has been high or whenever it has been low, no team has outscored that Ben Simon team. And yes, that second half of the season, well, there was that run from mid-January to the end of February where in 15 games they won 14 and lost the other one in overtime with a backup netminder. So second half collapses don't tend to include 29 points out of 30. A lot of those early season games.
How did they do in March and April, though, Jonathan?
How did they do in March and April? They won their final 4 games to win the league title, which was all they needed to do. They got across the line. Yeah, they'd lost a game to Belfast and Nottingham in the run, but we knew at that stage that wouldn't matter because we only needed 4 more wins as long as one of them was Belfast at home. So we know how many we needed to win, and that's exactly how many they won. Okay, they didn't run away with it, but is that not credit to the other teams around them rather than a knock against Ben Simon? But
so Jonathan,
if your point is that Simon was a man for a crisis, this team is not in crisis. So it comes down to Thompson or Blaisdell. And
what about Matsos? Why aren't you making the case for Matsos?
I don't think the hockey under Matsos was as entertaining as it was under other coaches. It was successful.
I don't think it needed to be. I don't think it needed to be as technical. I don't think it needed to be as... It was a different era. And I mean, we all love Matty. We all had great times with Matty. He was a good lad. And again, I take you back to episode 1. I spoke to a few players about different players, different positions, different coaches. And a couple of the guys who played under Matsos said to me, yeah, you know what, the man management, knew when to turn it on, turn it off, was first class with Dave Matsos. But none of them commented on anything other than that about Matty. So I think Matsos, his winning record was excellent, but I think Matsos had a lot of good assistant coaches that didn't also perhaps carry the title of assistant coaches. Doug Shepherd, we haven't spoke about him. Shepherd was very instrumental over the Matsos era, but you also had MUNN, you also had Lehman, you had big personalities that led that team. I think it is a straight fight between Blazer and Paul.
Just to pick up on that, the only coach who left the Sheffield Steelers and went on to win a trophy with another club, Dave Matsos.
Where did he go?
He was an OHL champion.
OHL, of course, yeah. So, I thought you meant in England. Yeah.
No, an OHL champion. So, he obviously did something right and developed as a coach. I'm absolutely torn on this.
But then if you take that argument, Seth, Mike didn't really coach after Sheffield. I know he had that spell in Nottingham. That doesn't really count. Paul went to the DL.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also coaching the Allsvenskan, also coached in Denmark. I mean, if you're looking at that, I'm going to give you Blazer.
Are you?
Hang on. Hang on.
No, I'm going to give you Jonathan. You had to be around him. He was and this team needs that. I think this team. I'll go with because I can see I still think that Paul Thompson, everybody criticises me for saying that Paul Thompson was the best coach we ever had. That was actually a misquote because what I actually said was I think he's head and shoulders the best coach we've ever had, and I still do, even though it finished sourly, and I understand that, and I can understand people looking at this going, he's your best mate and all that, which is, but. I still feel he is, and I think he coached his team to a Grand Slam. I do think he would.
Right,
But
just a couple of...
for a one-off night, I can give you Blazer. But
For
Jonathan,
Blaisdell, though, we've got to remember that there's only one season of Elite League to go on, and all the achievements from the Super League days,
he won a double in that
we shouldn't
season.
be taking them into consideration. We're talking about what they were as their elite,
But
as an Elite League coach.
But then we give the
yeah.
job to Dave Matsos, then don't we? Because he's the most successful coach in the Elite League era.
Well,
Paul
no, it's
won a
just...
league.
No, it's not saying
Paul
that
won a-
because the point about Blaisdell is that one season still has the best winning percentage of any coach. But there are other coaches who have been here for 1 year and won stuff. So, Simon got my nod, Blazer gets the nod elsewhere, but...
Because he
we
won
haven't
2
mentioned
trophies,
Gerard
not
Adams
one.
yet. Why have we not talked about Gerard Adams, who came in and took over a team that hadn't been managed well and took them to a playoff final, then got his own players in and went and won a league title? Adams needs to be mentioned in this discussion.
100%, yeah, 100%. Seth, your views on G?
Yeah, like him a lot. I think
Everybody
he's...
likes him, yeah.
Sorry?
I said everybody likes him a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
that's never been...
But if I'm picking my 1, 2, 3, or my 1, 2 as it is in this case, I think Paul Thompson is the best coach that ever coached the Sheffield Steelers, without a shadow of a doubt. I think Mike Blaisdell is the coach that I would enjoy coaching, or the guy I would enjoy watching coach this particular group of players, I think. Paul Thompson, he has done many a brilliant thing, and people will only look back when his career eventually finishes, whenever that is at some point in the future, at what he's done for British coaches across the rest of world hockey. And then you'll realise the fight that he had within the Sheffield Steelers to modernise the hockey club on the playing front and turn it into what it is now, which is the equivalent of any American League hockey club. In North America, it's the equivalent of an awful lot of teams in the SHL in terms of what it has behind the scenes, without having the millions and millions of euros that those SHL, those DEL clubs have behind the scenes to be able to have the infrastructure they need to be able to run properly. So Paul Thompson has done unbelievable things, and I fully support David in what he says. But I'm in this for laughs and giggles. I also need David to be alongside me in this and not be worried out of his mind that his best mate's getting panned by somebody on Twitter. So I need David to be enjoying the ride as Mike Blaisdell takes the aliens from the front row and introduces them to his friends as he deflates them. I need Blazer to be wandering around as he has his 15th cup of coffee and he's pacing up and down that corridor in between periods as he's absolutely effing and blinding about every single player in the locker room. I need Mike Blaisdell to be coming out in the paper and saying that he will pay for any player that he sees out on the town drinking. He'll pay for them to go home if he sees them out drinking that week. Yet on the Monday night when it gets to the Nickelback concert, he's the first guy at the bar with 20 beers and all the players thought it was a test. That's why I want Mike Blaisdell.
He makes a very good point, Jonathan Fearnley.
We've gone through this saying if this is a Steelers team to play one game for your life, and if it's going on that criteria, then Blaisdell gets the nod over Thompson. Paul Thompson,
yes,
all the characteristics you've mentioned.
If it was for a season, I would 100% battle harder for Paul.
Yeah, if it was for the next 10 years of the club, yeah. In terms of what he was building and the ideas he had and the steps you've already spoken about, then yes, it's Thompson. If it's just for one season, there are plenty of candidates. If there are people we need in a crisis or to drop in mid-season, it's different. But Blazer for one game, it's hard to argue for that. Thompson as a great coach, absolutely. He's got 5 Elite League titles. The chasing pack, they've made it as far as 2. He is way out ahead. Was he as good a coach in Sheffield as he was, maybe say, in his prime in Coventry? Maybe, maybe not.
No, he was a better coach, Jonathan. He was a better coach. I was
just going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I can't, I'm so frustrated. I'm shaking at the screen right now. You don't understand how, it's like trying to compare one of the first year Sheffield Steelers players, Phil Lee. Try and compare Phil Lee with a Robert Dowd in terms of what they're able to achieve. Or one of the British forwards that played back in the day in comparison with Robert Dowd. It is just so far apart. And you have these conversations where they go, yeah, Ian Robertson's a way better player than Robert Dowd. No, he's not. In a million years, and that's nothing against Ian Robertson. He played at a different time in a different era with different sticks and different equipment. But you put the players head to head, and one skates faster, shoots harder, is bigger, stronger, fitter than the other one. And that's it. You know, if you compare Paul Thompson with the 2004 version with Paul Thompson of 2020, he will say, I'm a million times better coach today than I was back then. I happened to recruit a really good team and coach them to amazing success and their wonderful memories, but there's no way in the world that I could say that I was a better coach then than I am now.
And also, I think, people will mock, but look at the players he actually brought into Sheffield. I mean, everybody goes, oh, it's Gerard Adams' team. And you know what? They had an affinity to G. We all had an affinity to G. From ownership down. There was, what happened. But it was a very different team. Yes, War and Fretter were still there. Fearnley wasn't there. And, Fitzgerald comes in, Mustikov comes in, Levi comes in, Vestberg comes in. Lots of different players came into that team that won that championship. And I actually think that Paul's a better coach today than he was when he was in Sheffield. And I think he was a better coach in Sheffield than he was when he was in Coventry. Now, you're not going to convince the majority of the fan base of that ever, just because, for whatever reason, and there's various reasons. One of them's maybe me. One of them may be just because, Paul had given an answer to a fan who probably deserved it when some other coaches wouldn't do. So I still think he's head and shoulders the best coach we've ever had. But I think for this one-off night, where we're going to have a real good laugh, and we're going to have a giggle, we'll go with Mike Water Blaisdell. I'll give Mike that vote. And I will have to say, and even though I loved working with Paul in Sheffield, but my fun times, if you go back all the way through, I have two little eras where I say they were the fun times. One is on the back of the bus with Rob Wilson and David Longstaff and Andre Marlowe and those boys. That was fun. And the other time was when I was then at the front of the bus with Mike and Rick Brabant. And if you want a good fun time, and Blazers just desire to win and screw you mentality as well, I think Mike Blaisdell was a boy. Are we decided? Have we got a 2-1 vote on that?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll go with Blaisdell.
An O vote on that somewhere down the line.
Are you okay with that, Jonathan?
I am, yeah. Just to wrap up the Thompson thing.
Okay, then who would you go with then if you
can't have Simon?
Vote?
I would go with Blaisdell. If the decision, between if it's between Thompson and Blaisdell, I'll go with Blaisdell. Just to wrap up the thing on Thompson, just to finish off, in terms of maybe my judgment of him, the season, obviously, the first few games of his final year, it wasn't great, and the season before, it wasn't really much of a title contention. I was thinking, well, if he was such a good coach, why were we not closer to that Cardiff team? And I know there's all sorts of arguments to be made.
Injuries.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, the biggest tick in Paul Thompson's coaching box for me is he won a league with Marek Pintz in goal. That's a heck of a coaching job to get that team through to a championship like they did. So, yeah, it's not a knock on Thompson at all. But if it comes down to one game right now for the life, then, yeah, Blaisdell gets my vote.
Okay then, boys. Let's recap, and let's.
I'm sorry it's taken so long, people.
I think people will have enjoyed it. I think they enjoy the debates, Thoris. I think they will, but and they're going to enjoy it now, and they're going to come back and they're going to batter us on social media, not for the first time with their selections. But this is what Jonathan Fearnley, Seth Bennett, and myself came up with. Our goaltenders with Jody Lehman and Jeff Wallhouse. On the back end, the incredible Steve MUNN, the most versatile and terrific player Rod Sarich, the grumpiest, nastiest, miserable man we've probably ever had walk into the arena, DION Darling, and then probably one of the nicest blokes that's ever walked in, Kevin Bollebrook. Ben O'Connor, I think you have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, the best British defenceman this country has ever produced. And we hear you, Mark Richardson, and we hear you, Cardiff fans, about Richie, different players, but Ben O'Connor, a special talent. And Davey Phillips, and when you think about Davey when he joined us, a lot of people criticised that movie was going to get a haul. He had that horrible year in Manchester. But he's come in here and he has been nothing but terrific. So O'Connor and Phillips rounded off. And then we decided up front to go with the king, Matthew Waugh. Magical Mark Dudiam and Colton Fretter. What a first line. Joey Talbot, Jeff Legui and Rob Dowd. They are our second unit. Ben Simon, well, he sent us Kent Simpson and Ashley Tate in that third unit that we talked so long about. And then we come back with Ryan Finnerty, Jonathan Phillips and Guillaume Debian. Jonathan Phillips is our captain and Michael Walter Blaisdell, with a dog called Sheffield, is our head coach. I'm happy with that. I hope you are. Seth, a final word on the team that we've put together. We've talked about it for many years. I guess if coronavirus continues, we'll put a ISL version together and we'll probably have some kind of fantasy game between the two sides. But your final version on that team and why you'd enjoyed looking at it so much.
I'm shattered. That's the first part of this. This has been an emotional experience, having to fight for the players that you believe in when you know the pool of players is fantastic. This is a team that has heart, it has soul, it has passion, it has skill, it has speed. It has everything that makes me want to go and watch hockey. It has everything that had me as a 13-year-old standing up in the Sheffield Arena, watching down at what was going on and thinking, crikey, I want to be involved in this. I've got to come back next week. We have to have a ticket for this event. This is a team you can hang your hat on. You can believe in. This is a team that won't take a night off. This is a team that will win you a lot of games, a lot of championships, and they're going to be an awful lot of fun to be around as well. It is a dream team, and if only, David, if only we could watch them go out and play, that would be something.
It would indeed. And Jonathan, I know I'd enjoy announcing it. I know on BBC 5 Live, Seth had enjoyed commentating on it. And on Steelers TV, I know you'd do the same. But what a team to commentate on this one would be.
Fantastic. There's so many of my favourite players there. Heroes, as I was a younger person growing up and seeing them over the years and seeing them to this present day, some of them is a great thrill and a great privilege to be doing what I'm doing. It's just the memories that this chat has brought back of, a chance to, have another think about that, that Jeff Legui goal against Belfast and that title winning goal and that playoff moment and all those other great things that have happened throughout the Steelers Elite League era. It's been wonderful. I've got some numbers here because of course I do.
Of course you do.
Steelers in the Elite League era, 244 different players that we could have picked from. 178 of those scored goals. Across League, Cup and European fixtures in that time, we've played 1,150 games and we've won 701 of them. We've had 104 shutouts and we've scored 72 hat-tricks from 39 different players.
And folks, that's why he is our Steelers TV man. Brilliant stats to wrap up with there, Jonathan. Seth, thank you for your time. Jonathan, thank you for yours. And also to Dave Burnham, who is going to edit this together. I think our third episode is an hour and a half long. So we hope you've enjoyed the debate. It is just that. It's debate, it's opinion. Of course, at the end of the day, it's only mine that really matters. But we've had great fun putting it all together. I'm going to give you just one question each, boys. And just a name, not a reason, just a name. One guy out of the Elite League era that would just automatically jump into this team. I'm going to start off with Scotty Allison. Seth?
David Longstaff.
Jonathan?
Ron Shudra.
Well, folks, that's a debate for another day. And if this virus continues, you can rest assured we'll be having it here on Steelers TV. Thanks for watching. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day or night it is. We're recording this at about 1:30 in the morning, and we hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Take care, and most of all, stay safe.